Fans?
Yeah.
No, it's impossible. I ain't playing. If I ain't got the fans in the crowd, that's what I play for. I play for my teammates, I play for the fans. That's what it's all about. So if I show up to an arena and ain't no fans in there, I ain't playing. So they can do what they want to do.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
appreciate it. I ain't never played the game without no fans.
Again, that was after Friday night's win over Milwaukee. Jay Williams, what'd you think of that?
First off, I want to preface my comment by saying I love the way LeBron James thinks and I love the way he leads. I think in this particular case, I thought it was a little bit irresponsible of him to say, I'm just not going to play if the fans aren't going to be there. And I know sometimes this can catch players off guard if you ask them that kind of serious question after a game. But I thought the right way he should have answered that is by saying, let's do more due diligence. Let's find out more information about this virus first, or what the league's policy is, and let's work together to make sure everybody's safety is actually in measure.
We have seen him historically in moments like this where maybe he was not prepared for the question, because if you watched his face and his body language, he was shocked. So clearly he hadn't seen the memo that the teams had received. Normally in this instance, he will take a breath and say, you know what, I don't know enough about this. And that's the direction I was surprised he didn't go in.
Yeah, I think the thought that I had, and you and I talked about this a little bit before the show, and I'm not trying to excuse anything or anyone, is that right after a game, I used to be a reporter, and I would go into these locker rooms after these games, and Doris, obviously, that's one of the things that you do regularly, is, the players are very focused on the things that just happened. And I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just trying to put into context the fact they just won a huge game. He just went ahead with Giannis. He's obviously feeling great. You get this kind of question in there. I'm not suggesting it was the right answer. It obviously isn't the right answer. But I don't know. Give him a pass might be too strong a word. I think it is important to put that into the context.
I completely understand. But I can combat that and say, from the time I've been 17 years old, going to college, or LeBron James playing for the Cavs or playing for Miami, there are ways that you can revert back to things that you can position yourself to get out of any comment, right? It's just, hey, I don't feel comfortable commenting on that yet. No comment, or let me do some more research. Let me talk to the league. I think there are different ways that you can approach that by them trying to just say, hey, I'm not going to play in any game.
I just think we put these players and coaches in situations where 3 and 4 and 5 times a day, they're asked to speak on something. And I'm going to tell you this, I've misspoke. And I want to give him a pass as well, because I could just tell by his face he was completely shocked. And his natural instinct, and this doesn't have anything to do with load management, but his natural instinct is to play the game he loves at a high level for himself, for his teammates, and make no mistake, for the fans.
Yeah, and again, we all hope it doesn't come to that, obviously, but it does not seem at this point beyond the realm of possibility that some of these games in some sports in this country will wind up being played without any spectators in the seats. We will see. Okay, more on this as we go. Laura, to the NFL.
Let's get back to it. And as reported by our Adam Schefter, the Saints will place a first-round tender on quarterback Taysom Hill, which means another team would have to give up a first-round draft pick to sign him away. So Dan Graziano and Bobby Carpenter here to talk a little more about this. Obviously, this means, Dan, that they really like Taysom Hill. And we're seeing that from Sean Payton in making this vote of confidence. What do you think is the thinking behind the move here?
It's Sean Payton putting his money where his mouth is. All you heard in Indianapolis when he talked about this situation was Sean Payton thinks Taysom Hill is ready, meaning ready to play quarterback in the NFL. Now, obviously, Drew Brees coming back was their first choice, but if he hadn't, Payton was ready to move forward potentially with Hill as the starter. So the first-round tender, almost $5 million, is a big deal. That is definitely him putting his money where his mouth is.
Yes, they're paying more to risk compensation because they want to make sure that they keep this guy. They think he's a vital part. He was on the field for 23% of their snaps last year, so that was obviously a big piece of it. But then 31 of those snaps, he was the only quarterback out there. And you see him throw the deep ball. They threw him in against Minnesota to try to throw this pass to make sure they could stretch the field, because I don't know if that's something that Drew Foley has in his arsenal right there. Sean Payton is one of the smartest guys in the NFL, and I think he wants to find the guy to be able to revolutionize the game. Much like Tim Tebow was supposed to do, Taysom Hill has kind of been able to do that a little bit.
Little TV magic. Bart Scott has appeared here. What do you think about this move, especially along the lines of maybe a little bit of load management for Drew Brees?
Well, we've seen Drew Brees wear down the year before. His arm seemed tired last year. I think it was a blessing in disguise. The fact that he got hurt early, it allowed him to kind of take a step back and come back. But you have to realize that he's still a 41-year-old quarterback, and those guys, you're going to have to eventually move on. Now, I don't know. Taysom Hill is a tough sell for me. He's a 30-year-old quarterback coming up in August, I believe. And to ask him to be a starting quarterback, learn how to drop back and not be in just situations, teams are going to get a book on him. But I think they have to do this because simply they have a lot of young players that are coming up, whether it's Lattimore coming up, Williams coming up, they're going to have to pay in free agency.
Is there something to be said, too, guys, for the fact that we've seen players like Lamar Jackson who have kind of revolutionized the way that we look at NFL offenses, and here's Sean Payton saying, well, I've got my guy who can do that.
Absolutely. What's interesting, you have two types of coaches in the NFL. You have guys who are scheme coaches where they're going to run what they run and find players to fit in it. And then you have guys that say, hey, I'm just going to compile the most talent I can, the Sean Paytons, the Bill Belichick's, and then I'm going to get real creative with how I use this. And so Sean Payton, I think, sees this as an opportunity. Can I try to find 4 or 5 years out of this guy and do something kind of the league has never seen before with a guy that no one expected?
And he's already using him. Even if he's sitting behind Drew Brees this year, he has ways to use him. That playoff game against Minnesota, they lost in overtime. If Taysom Hill hadn't been in that game, they lose it by 30. I mean, he was the only one making plays. So he definitely has a use for him in the meantime while he grooms him as a future quarterback.
And grooming him, this is a great audition. It's a $5 million audition, assuming they don't get something done very cheap to get a look at a guy who could be their franchise quarterback.
Feels like a win-win for the Saints. How about the XFL, though, Greeny?
Yeah, there was controversy there over the weekend. During the final seconds of Houston's win over Seattle, Houston's quarterback P.J. Walker took a knee on 4th down. It ended the game. However, Walker took the knee with approximately 2 seconds left on the clock. So Seattle should have gotten one more play. The XFL has acknowledged the mistake and apologized. They tweeted out a statement that read in part, quote, with a 9-point differential on the score. And remember, in the XFL, that's a 1-possession game. Seattle was denied an opportunity to tie the game. The XFL sincerely regrets this error. In addition, Wes Booker, who served as the officiating supervisor for Saturday's game, has been reassigned. And so whenever things like this happen, what's with the look on your face over there?
I saw it. It's tough, and they're tough there in the XFL. Reassigned.
Where did he go?
You don't make any mistakes in our league.
No, we're going to find out.
I think we may have talked over that joke. Make it again.
That's good.
So where did he go? Foot Locker?
That's mean, but it's funny. I guess the point that I would ask is this the kind of transparency that we want to see from the National Football League?
I think fans do. People want to see if something happened, explain to me why it happened, and then why it's not going to happen again. And so they came out, they owned it. A lot of times you'll see it kind of brushed under the rug. And then they also said, hey, what about that official? The NFL really wouldn't address that. They're not going to put one of their guys out there saying he's been reassigned, where Bart said, hey, maybe he's working at the mall now. He's over at Foot Locker. They're taking care of this issue. So I think if the more the XFL does this and the more successful they are, you could see some of these things maybe percolate to the NFL a little bit.
I have to lodge a protest. Can I lodge a protest?
Lodge your way.
Does or does the National Football League not send letters to teams that get calls made against them that cost them games, and I'm told the coach gets up in front of all the players and rips the letter up? What do we care about the league now? It doesn't make any difference. The mistake was made. What difference? I think the NFL has owned their mistakes over the years, and it doesn't help that the XFL didn't overturn the result of the game.
It doesn't, but no one ever knows what happens to that official.
Right.
Guys get cut when you lose games. Coaches get fired when you lose games. And that's all players and coaches have ever asked for. We spend all week, we spend all year working on this. You cost us a playoff game or a chance to potentially go to the Super Bowl. We want to know that someone's going to be accountable just like we are.
Well, Dan, the NFL has looked at the XFL for some things. Is this the type of thing that they would try to adopt?
I doubt it. I mean, when you look at what the XFL is trying to do, they're trying to get a foothold. So a lot of what they're trying to do is position themselves. They don't want to be in competition with the NFL, but a lot of it is, hey, look, the NFL doesn't do this. We do. Isn't this refreshing? So I think that's a big part of it. I don't think the NFL is going to have incentive to start reassigning officials after one mistake. I don't think they want to be in that business. But I think, they look at some of the stuff that's happened on the field, the kickoff, et cetera. In terms of this transparency element, I'd be surprised if it made its way in there anytime soon.
But the XFL, to me, is a gift that keeps on giving, because it's a way where the NFL can test rules and see how it's received. You talk about that. I love the fact that they have the cameras up in the booth so we can understand the decision process of why things are overturned. Transparency is what we want, and this is what the XFL gives us.
Indians.
Here's the one thing that the NFL should absolutely adopt from the XFL, and that was this moment in Sunday's game when they made a giant beer snake. The fans did there in D.C. But look at XFL Commissioner Oliver Luck is one of the members of the beer snake. So this is something, Roger, if you're watching, this I think is the one thing they should adopt, is the NFL Commissioner, Roger Goodell, should be out there with a cup in the beer snake. That feels like, forget about this transparency. Get the beer snake. All right, tonight, championship week continues with the West Coast Conference semis. Gonzaga, San Francisco, 9 Eastern on ESPN, followed by St. Mary's and BYU. You can watch both games on the ESPN app, wherever you may be. As we continue, LeBron James sent a message to the NBA with big wins over the Bucks and the Clippers. Is he now the MVP frontrunner? Spoiler alert, yes he is.